Hello, and welcome to another episode of Everybody Counts. It's Malone Bailey's official podcast. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm Caroline Rosen, and I'm in the marketing department here at Malone Bailey. So today's topic is on millennials and how they are changing the workplace. It's a topic that's been widely discussed. And before we jump into our conversation, let me give you just a quick overview of Everybody Counts. It's a podcast that features a variety of different voices. So we have everyone from interns and staff all the way up to the partner level who come on our podcast and talk about a plethora of different topics. So it might be something that's more technical focused, like an SEC or FASB update, or it could also be a non-technical topic, maybe something focused on soft skills, communication skills, firm culture, practice management, something on the topic of recruiting, retention. Our podcast covers all different kinds of topics and provides all different kinds of perspectives. So you can expect a very versatile conversation on Everybody Counts. I'm delighted to be joined today by Raven Fournier. She is Malone Bailey's Public Relations Coordinator, and she is very involved in the firm's recruiting efforts and obviously specifically recruiting millennials to come join our team. So welcome, Raven.
Thanks, Caroline. I'm glad to be here today.
And we are very excited to talk about this topic. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure thing. So as you mentioned, I'm the Public Relations Coordinator here at Malone Bailey. I joined the firm in 2014 after moving to Houston from good old Louisiana, next state over. Mm-hmm. And part of my role here is I work closely with our HR manager, Debbie Whitley, in recruiting efforts for the firm, as well as working with you as well in the marketing department. Right. So I'm kind of split between. But I do a lot of recruiting, researching trends on the best way to get new recruits, and kind of what recent grads are looking like, because it changes. I mean, it's changed just so much in just the 3 years that I've been here.
And so have you found that your recruiting efforts take into account some of these characteristics that we've noticed with millennials specifically?
For sure. Definitely. Once you kind of learn and figure out what's important to millennials, it tailors the information you give them at these recruiting events, at interviews. It helps you understand what they're looking for. So once I know that, I'm better able to give them the information that they'll probably be looking for, and hopefully sway them to join our firm.
Right. And we have so many great programs here at Malone Bailey that have addressed some of those needs and desires expressed by that particular group as part of some overall retention effort. Okay, so Raven, you obviously spend a lot of time with recruiting, and so you're really a great resource for this discussion. Let's go ahead and jump right in. There are lots of articles out there about millennials, the good, the bad, and how they are living their lives differently from generations that came before them. So from buying houses and starting families later on in life to new views on what a true work-life balance is. It's a generation that's all about changing things for the better, mostly the better, right? So let's talk about exactly what the term millennials refers to. What is the definition of a millennial?
Right. So for this purpose, we're going to go with millennials, which are also known as Generation Y. It's really people born between the years of 1980 and 2000.
So that is not, someone born in 1980 is about 37, all the way down to
17-year-olds about, if they were born in 2000. The youngest will be 17. Yeah. So almost, I think, either juniors or seniors in high school.
Wow. Okay.
And honestly, if you do more research on it, you'll find that there's subdivisions within the millennial group.
Right. For example, this new micro generation, the Zennials, which I think is 1978 or 77 through 82 or 83.
Right. They were kind of on that the cusp of that technology advancement. And so they're going to be a little bit different than your millennials born in 1999 and 2000.
Right. And that's kind of a mix between Gen X and millennials. And I can tell you, just somebody that fits within that time frame and somebody that would be considered a Zennial, I definitely feel different from this group, even though I'm considered part of this group.
Right.
And they're this discovery, if you will, actually is a recent one that was very recently published, and it's out there on the internet. So I find that very interesting. This talk about these micro generations within a generation.
Right. It is. It's really interesting. Again, it covers such a wide gap. So like I said, if you do kind of look more into it, there's definitely your subgroups. But I think you'll find that with most other labeled generations that not everybody's going to feel quite like they fit in. But that millennial generation, they make up about close to 25% of the U.S. population right now. And they're the largest living generation in U.S. history as of 2016. So there's more of them living right now than there were, for instance, say, when all your baby boomers were alive. Okay. So we're a huge group, very large. And so with that, you're obviously going to start to find that as this millennial group enters the workforce, starts their big purchases, those years where they're buying a house, buying a car. As we get into those years, it's really going to change the way businesses, hire millennials and how they kind of advertise and cater to millennials to get them to buy their goods and services.
Right. And then also for us, on the topic of retaining this group.
Right. You're looking at a lot, it's, as we'll get into in a little bit, it's not going to be as easy as giving someone a great pay.
Right.
There's a lot more involved in it than just you've got great pay.
Right. And we'll get into some of those things in just a minute. So there's been a lot of buzz about millennials. It's a buzzword, and people have all different kinds of opinions. If you go out there on social media or just do an internet search, people are very vocal about how they feel about millennials, both good and bad.
Right.
People are saying positive things about this group too, so let's not forget that. So why is it such a buzzword? It's
especially now. Like I just mentioned, the millennials they're starting to enter into their prime spending years, entering the workforce. So like we said, those born in 1980 are going to be in their 30s now. And those born in 2000 are 17. So they're almost at that graduating high school age, getting into college, workforce. So, it's really this time when they're, those born earlier in the millennial group, buying houses, buying cars, having kids, all those big spending years. According to a study done by Goldman Sachs, millennials are actually poised to reshape the economy because there are so many of them. And because of this, the companies are having to re-examine how they do business. So again, as I mentioned earlier, how do they not only hire and retain millennials, but on the flip side, how do they advertise to them? What do millennials want? And so it really is forcing them to kind of reshape how they do business.
Yeah.
Millennials take a much different approach to workplace culture and the values, what they value in an employer. And their expectations are very different than generations before them. So, I really think it's a buzzword just because companies are having to learn how to keep up with this new generation on both ends.
Right.
And really, it's just kind of, it's the shift that we're seeing.
It is the shift. And I, a couple of years ago, participated in a seminar up at the University of Illinois the topic was on recruiting millennials and the approach that people should start to keep in mind as they are recruiting this group. And one of the things that they said, and I thought that it was so interesting, is, there is a lot of buzz out there about millennials, and sometimes this group is criticized for some of the values that they have, and we're going to talk about what some of those values are in just a minute. But at this particular seminar, they said, partly yes, millennials are changing the way that things are done, and because of their values, they are having an impact on companies and But the other big part of, the problem, or not problem, but the buzz is that other generations are just getting older.
Right.
So oftentimes you'll find that the generations that are getting older are sometimes critical of the younger generations and how they do things. So part of it is, yes, this group is different, but the other part is that the rest of us are just getting older.
Right. And I think millennials will eventually get to that point where they're the older generation, and there's going to be a new wave.
Right.
Technology has changed so much in just the past 5 years. So can you imagine how far it will advance by the time we're that older generation? Right. So I would completely agree with that topic.
Right. So on the topic of the values of this particular group, what changes are we already seeing in companies that are trying to employ millennials? And I think that this part of our discussion will address what some of their values are and how companies are responding to those. So millennials place a high value on a true work-life balance. I feel like that's one of the main things you hear about when you hear a conversation or read an article about millennials. They don't feel a need to work a strict 9 to 5 Monday through Friday schedule just to get things done. Flexibility is a huge draw for them, especially with technology. They kind of don't see a reason to have to go to the office every day with laptops and Skype and iPhones. And the ability to remote in.
Right. So it's much easier to be able to work from home sometimes, or not even home, maybe just remotely. Unlimited vacation time. I know that's probably a pretty controversial one, but we're seeing some companies offer that to their employees. And some of the early studies have actually shown that when they offer employees unlimited vacation, they take less vacation than they were before because they don't feel they have to use it all or they lose it. But going back to the topic of having really a true work-life balance. So we are in the public accounting profession. Right. We have our busy season. Right. Obviously, there is a stretch of time here where the people are working more than just an 8-hour workday. Right. So how would you say at Malone Bailey specifically we have addressed that, the fact that we are in a profession that requires overtime sometimes during certain parts of the year, while trying to keep this group happy? So Malone Bailey, we offer actually quite a few things to cater to this millennial group. I would say first off, we offer flexible schedules for our staff. So whether we have people that want to start earlier, they're early birds, or whether we have people who are kind of night owls and want to stay later, we have that flexible schedule to where people are able to kind of create it how it fits to them. We also offer overtime, so paid overtime, I should say. So the way that works is our staff have the option to either bank their overtime hours to use later as more vacation days, which really we know works well for this group. They like to travel, they like experiences, so the more vacation days they have, the better. They also have the option to get paid out for it. So if they want just a check for all those extra hours they work, we can definitely put it into their checks as well. We also offer a 980 schedule. So during those non-busy times, when we're, not working on deadlines, we offer our staff, they're able to work their 80 hours in 9 days instead of 10 and get every other Friday off. So, great. 3-day weekends, there's a lot within a couple hours of Houston. We also have 2 great airports. So really, there's lots of options for those 3-day weekends as far as travel go. And then lastly, we do offer 4-day holidays for, some of the holidays like Labor Day and Memorial Day are usually on a Monday. And if our staff meet internal goals that we have set, we'll offer them Friday off. So it turns into a 4-day holiday, which of course is even better than a 3-day holiday. So, we feel like these different plans that we have in place really cater to those millennials in their love of travel and experience and being able to get out in the world and do stuff. Right. And having a life beyond work. Right. Like we've mentioned, a work-life balance. Right. So going back to, the original question
that was part of this discussion was, what changes are we seeing in companies that are trying to employ millennials?
Right.
And it's a question that also speaks to values. So what are some of the other things that we're seeing?
So, I think a big myth is that millennials are selfish and narcissistic and don't want any help. I'm sure that may be true for some people out there, but for the candidates that we see and a lot of the people we meet, it isn't the norm. The top question I get when I'm out recruiting and through our hiring process is, what training program does your company offer? Millennials are interested in that extra, going the extra mile. They're hungry for that training and that knowledge. They want the extra coaching to make sure that they're doing whatever they need to be doing and understand it to get the job done well and correctly. We offer new employees go through a very full training program when they start with our firm. We also offer a buddy program. So they're assigned a buddy, somebody who's a little bit closer to their level and was in their shoes not too long ago. They also get a mentor, which is usually somebody at the manager level who's kind of been through all of this a couple times, and they're able to offer insight and really be a true mentor to our younger people. And we also have our Next Gen Council, which is, our council for our partners to be able to hear from all levels of the firm what their thoughts and opinions are on things and how we can make sure the firm is moving in the direction of tomorrow's leaders. So really, this is a great outlet for everyone in the firm to, maybe make suggestions on what the firm can do better, or what are we already doing that's great. So giving millennials these resources to ask questions and voice their opinions and concerns, it really helps Malone Bailey as a firm grow and change with this new generation.
Right. And we know that this is a group that place a ton of importance on the bigger picture. So they come in to a new job and they want to be plugged in many different parts of their organization, whatever it may be. So for those that are joining our firm, it's not just about doing the audit work. They want to be plugged into the committees and to the councils that we have and that we offer. They want to be plugged into different social events that are going on in the firm. They want to be plugged in as trainers one day. So there's a much bigger picture that focuses on their overall professional development that they place great emphasis on. And I think that that's also something that companies must keep in mind as it pertains to this group, and making sure that they're not just pigeonholed to the job they're brought in for. Yes, the majority of their time, of course, will be spent doing their job, but this is a group that's going to want to be plugged into other facets of the organization as well. Okay, so this seems like quite a bit of change already. What can we expect in the workplace going forward?
So I think you'll start to see employers offer more flexibility, especially as technology progresses in the coming years. Like we said, laptops, Skype, video, conference calls, cell phones, all help with the flexibility idea on a global front. There's going to be a higher importance on work-life balance than before. Like we said earlier, employees don't want to just work that strict 9 to 5 and come in, only do the work and go home. They want to be involved, but they also want to be able to have a life outside of work. I think we're going to see, some employers already offer unlimited vacation, like we've mentioned. So I think you'll start to see more employers offer that. Millennials care quite a bit about volunteering and giving back. Some employers even offer paid time for them to take off and go volunteer. We have our community outreach committee, so we try to get out into the community and give back to our city. And our staff love that. They like being able to make a difference, not just with the work they do, but outside of work.
And that's a question that we get a lot at recruiting events. What does your company do in terms of community service?
Right, it is. That's probably, I would say that's second to what is your training program.
Right.
I think we're also going to see employers not focus solely on what a student's GPA is and their book smarts, but also on their interpersonal skills. Even in a business like ours where people think, oh, it's just CPAs, they just sit behind a desk, they don't talk to people. That's really not true
at all, right?
Especially, with what we do, we're talking, our employees are talking with each other, with partners, with clients, with service providers.
Right.
So having those interpersonal skills are very important. Like we said, millennials are attracted to more than just a good pay. They want, the different benefits of, possibly flexible schedule or having different committees they can join within a company. They're really just looking for a place to continuously grow and be part of a team. As you mentioned, it's that sense of belonging and the bigger picture of not just what I'm doing for the firm, but what are we doing as a whole, and how can I be a part of that?
Right.
And so that's where joining and being part of the firm's or any company's different committees, councils, clubs, it really comes into play.
Right. So how can companies grow and improve with this new generation in the workforce?
I think the number one thing is to be open to change.
Right.
It's, for a lot of people out there, it's going to be a bit of a shift. But just be open to it. Hear out their ideas. You don't have to change everything to what they say, and you maybe want to start slow, but just be open to at least listening. They like to be heard, as most people do, especially in the workplace. It's going to shake things up a little, like I said, and so I think employers just need to listen and just hear them out.
Right.
The older generations can definitely resist because the way they've been doing it has probably been successful. If their companies made it this far.
Right.
So in this aspect, it's not really about changing what's successful, but it's swapping it to where it's different aspects, but you're still a successful company. This isn't the workplace of our parents or our grandparents. Right. This is a very different workplace we're coming into and millennials are coming into. And so it's definitely going to change. But I think, we just need to embrace the technology and that hunger for continued learning and collaborating with millennials, really work as a team and try not to single each generation out.
Right. And on that note of being hungry for continued learning, we also know that this is a group that really wants regular feedback. They want feedback. They want that constructive criticism. Past generations have taken on the belief no news is good news. But that's not the case with this generation. They would like feedback on a very regular basis. And it's important to them that they hear from their supervisors very, very regularly, on how they're doing, what they can do better, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So last question before we conclude, and we are going to switch gears quite a bit here. This is called our This or That section, and it's where we ask our guest to let us know what their preference is on two different things. And we're going to keep in line with the topic of today's conversation, millennials. We know that they love, of course, to travel. We know that they love experience. We know that they like to get out and try new things. So Raven, as far as Broadway goes, Hamilton or Wicked?
That one is a really tough one. I have seen Wicked twice and of course know all the songs. But I also know all the songs to Hamilton. I haven't seen it yet. But just if we're going off the songs, Wicked has some pretty classic ones, but I think overall I'm going to have to go with Hamilton on this one.
Okay, and I hope that you get tickets.
Oh, me too. They'll be here in 2018.
Okay. And on the topic of travel, Paris or Florence?
That one's tough as well. I lived in Florence for a little while, and I've visited Paris. I love Versailles, but I think I'm going to have to go with Florence. It's such a nice city. There's so much art, so much great food, and it's Italy. So
the full package.
Yep.
Well, Raven, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing all this really insightful information on the topic of millennials in the workplace. I think it's a topic that we will all continue to pay to pay very close attention to, and we'll all want to continue to learn more and more about this group. So hopefully our listeners have a better understanding of this topic and some of the questions that are in place for this group. We appreciate you listening in. We invite you to check out our website, www.malonebailey.com, for more information about our service offering. There's lots of great resources on our website, including past episodes of this podcast and past versions of our newsletter, which contains SEC and FASB updates. So we will be sure to catch you all next time, and thanks again.